Hi, I'm Brandon Keeton. I was just interviewed by Keith Andrew and the Keith Andrew Network, and had a great time here talking about movies, talking about life. It's been a good time.
Guys, I'm Jeremiah Kipp, and I was just interviewed by Keith Andrew at Keith Andrew Network. What a great conversation. It feels terrific to have a give and take with a interviewer who is interesting and interested. Thanks for the rewarding talk. And Brandon, thank you for your service, and thanks for being a part of this conversation as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Andrew, and welcome to the Keith Andrew Network. It is episode 41. That's right, season 12, episode number 41. We have two great guests here on the show. They already introduced themselves. So the first subject we're going to talk about is icebreakers. Box number one, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
My name is Jeremiah Kipp, and I'm a film director. I'm based in New York. I was raised in Rhode Island, and I grew up in the backwoods, and I always imagined monsters and creatures living out in the woods because I was a very lonely child. But when I was 12, my grandparents got a VHS camcorder that they, I think, meant to record family picnics and weddings, and I used as an excuse to get all of my friends together, or anybody who lived in the neighborhood. And I said, all right, we're doing a zombie movie. Wear clothes you're not afraid to get torn up. You're going to attack the house today. Or we're making a war movie. Bring your gear. We're going out in the woods. And that started at age 12, and it never stopped. I went to film school at NYU, and I've been fortunate enough to work in the film industry ever since.
Oh, that sounds absolutely amazing. And what about you, Box 2?
I did things exactly in the opposite order. I had a scholarship to college for acting, and I didn't take it, and I joined the Marine Corps instead. Found out that I had a talent for jumping out of helicopters and blowing stuff up. So I decided to stay for 21 years. And when I got out, I opened a martial arts school. I had been a boxer for 18 years. So I opened a martial arts school. I did that for 10 years, found myself doing my own commercials, and thought, I wonder what would happen if I actually tried at this. I had a scholarship to college. Maybe I'm still good at it. 2 months later, I was the Scott's lawn care guy. And 4 months after that, I was executive producing and having a small role in my first feature film, which won Independent Film of the Year for 2023, according to Film Threat. Um, I am now writing and directing my own stuff now, as well as producing and acting. So I'm trying to be a big hyphenate.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Now, when we come back from this quick commercial break, we're going to start off with the coronavirus. All right, so we're back from the quick commercial break. So, box one, we're going to start off with you. First subject we're going to talk about is the coronavirus. How has the coronavirus impacted your life, and do you see things in a different point of view?
Yeah, well, it changed all our lives, didn't it? It was a global pandemic. Uh, I remember that the day before New York shut down was the day that we finished shooting my feature number 6. It was called Slapface. It was a monster movie that was really a movie about where I grew up, and we were doing the very last insert shots of that movie right before New York shut down. And once it shut down, I was really grateful that we had something to do, which was editing the movie, because it was such an isolating, bizarre, surreal, strange time. I lived in a very small apartment at the time in Astoria, Queens, and I got to jump into another world when we were editing the movie. We edited it virtually through over cyberspace. But so I was very grateful that I had community in that way. and was able to have a creative outlet during a very lonely time. But there was a period during that, like that lockdown where I was like, oh my gosh, it's been probably 45 days since I've hugged another person, and that was very, very strange. I think a big life changing event was I moved out of New York City and moved to the Hudson Valley, 15 minutes from where we shot that movie, Slapface, the one that we did the pickup shots for. I fell in love with the area. I said, why should I live in a little box, in this strange, I love New York City. I've lived there for 30 years, but it was time for a change. And I think coronavirus was a big factor in saying I want to live in a house with multiple rooms, and not be in a little tiny box. I'd like to live in the country, so so if I need to, I can go out on the lawn and look out at the duck pond and feed the ducks. And I have animals now. I never thought of myself as a duck person, but yeah, coronavirus changed that. It was like I considered myself to be a city boy, a guy who moved out of the country into the city in order to find fellow outsiders. And then once coronavirus happened, I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Uh, and I moved to the country, which is where I live now.
No, absolutely. And if I'm no expert on being an actor, but if you ever need anyone in the Hudson Valley area, I would love to work with you if that's a possibility.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a possibility.
So then, also for the longest time, I always thought about moving to the city, getting my own apartment. But right now, the city's a real cesspool. So until things turn around, I'm thinking, I was born and raised. I was against living in the Hudson Valley, but you know what? I'm 36. I've been here half my life.
Mm.
It is pretty nice. You take the good with the bad, except for the Hasidics, but that's a different subject. But Brandon, the question I want to ask you is how has the pandemic impacted your career?
Well, that's funny. You have a complete dichotomy of guests here. Once again, I'm completely the opposite. I have always been a country person. I was born and raised in Kentucky. Most of my adult life in the Marine Corps was in North Carolina. What you're hearing right now is not how I normally talk. I found that the further north that I moved, the slower people would talk to me. Like, no, no, I'm educated. I have a master's. I own a business. Um, but yeah, I got started in this business during the pandemic. Um, we were supposed to open our second location for the martial arts school, and I had all of this money saved up that I was going to throw at that location until it got up on its feet. And then the day that we were supposed to open that second location for the martial arts school was the day that the lockdowns went into effect in Pennsylvania. And so I had all this money saved up, and the accountant was calling me and saying, "Hey, you need to spend this money, or Uncle Sam's going to take 40% of your stuff." And don't get me wrong, I love my country. I served it for 21 years, but I don't want the government to have 40% of what I've earned. So Turbo Cola ended up becoming my tax write-off.
Well, first
Uh,
off, if I didn't say before, I didn't mean to interrupt, but first off, thank you for your service. I really appreciate that.
oh yeah, I'm done. Um, but yeah, I got started during COVID into this whole thing. We were filming Turbo Cola in December of 2020, right in the middle of the lockdowns. And it was just 10, I mean 10 people made that movie. And we ended up making something pretty decent, and now the bug has bitten me, and I'm acting and producing and directing and writing all my own stuff now, as well as for others. I wrote a short film that got directed recently, 2 months ago, got picked up by the guy who won Cannes 2 years ago for his short film Noisy, and Cedric Hill, if you want to IMDb stalk him. He's a really nice guy, and so I'm just on the up. I'm on the uphill slope. I feel right now, and I don't think I think COVID for me was a swift kick in the butt to
Oh,
go live the dream,
it's uncensored. You can say whatever you want.
Okay.
But the next question, well, because both of you are in film, so let's just keep it in the films. So the next subject I want to talk to you about is being a producer. Was there, Brandon, we're gonna start off with you. Was there a film that influenced you or impacted your life that you wanted to be a producer?
Um, obviously, I'm in the independent world, so obviously Clerks, obviously, Reservoir Dogs, Slacker, the big ones. Um, Napoleon Dynamite, I am a fan, and of course I grew up in the 80s, so I love Back to the Future, I love Die Hard, you know, I just I love movies, and when it comes to story, I love movies. And this was one of my insistences when I made Turbo Cola, was that we wanted everything to connect together. I didn't want any loose ends at the end of the story. So everybody connects to everybody in some fashion,
What,
and I'm a fan of that.
what about you, Jeremiah?
I loved George Romero movies. I loved Dawn
Hmm.
of the Dead. When I was a little kid, I wanted to live in that shopping mall. The Dawn of the Dead is about some survivors of a zombie apocalypse who land their helicopter on the top of a shopping mall and then proceed to live in that mall for they're going to wait out the apocalypse there. I thought it was extraordinary. And I watched that movie, and just everything felt a lot more possible. You felt like George Romero got the National Guard and the local police in his movie by calling up the National Guard and the police and getting them into his movie. I found that so inspiring. Unsurprisingly, George Romero worked on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, in Pittsburgh. So there was a real community flavor to that movie that I loved. Probably you got some of the same feeling from watching Clerks, Brendan. It's like that feeling that you can go out and do this was
Yeah.
something I got from that movie. And then the other one, which is weird because I don't know if anybody can go out and do Mad Max, but I was like a nut for the Mad Max movies. I loved Mad Max and The Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome. And then, of course, much later on, Fury Road. There was something about like watching those cars hurtling through space and like smashing into each other that felt like I was like, oh, you don't even need dialogue for movies. Each image tells the story. And there was something about Mad Max in the 70s that, it was like those crazy kids. Well, George Miller he was a surgeon, and, he had a whole career like Brendan, he had a whole career before going into movies. But, he was like, yeah, I'm going to go out and do this weird Australian movie about like road racing chaos and carnage. And then a few years later, we did The Road Warrior, and it's like, oh, that's a bigger movie. You can go out and like build on top of your previous movie. I found that also so inspirational. So there's so many movies I love. Like Die Hard also is like the best Christmas movie ever. Dawn of the Dead and Mad Max, the Mad Max series were like big movies for me
It's
when I
funny
was a
that you
child.
should mention that. A lot of people agree and disagree. Do you consider Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yes.
It has such holiday spirit. I'm not kidding. It's a romantic movie. It's like like John McClane does. He kind of is like a fuller person by the end of that movie. But I also think it's like one of the best action films ever made, just in terms of the way that it's staged, the sheer delight the villain. It's like how do you make a good hero, make an amazing villain? The villains in Die Hard are so memorable. Uh, and they have like all of them have such personality. It's something that when I
Yeah.
saw that movie, I was like, wow, all the characters have such life in Die
The
Hard.
thing that
Great action, yeah, Brendan.
speaking of something like that, specifically with Die Hard, I think especially in the 80s, when I was coming up, we were so used to seeing the hero never getting hurt. Like the
Yeah,
hero would go, it was like John Wick. Now he goes into a room, there's 20 dudes in there, he whips everybody's ass and walks out without a scratch. And those were cool, and the martial arts movies, I love those. But there was something about Die Hard where this dude's getting hurt. He's got bloody feet. He's got he's getting shot. You know, it's the stakes were raised because I think they made him more human rather than this, wrecking machine that went in through and, just eliminated bad guys willy-nilly. So I'm a fan of that as well. Speaking of childhoods, I remember when I was a kid, we would mow lawns on Saturday, and we would go down to the mom and pop uh, video store, and it was a Saturday. The girl who ran it was 14 years old. She was the daughter of the owners. She did not care what we rented. As long as we paid, we rented the sickest stuff you could possibly. Some of the stuff has since been banned in the United States, and it was awesome. And I loved horror. That's where I discovered Evil Dead. And
Fantastic.
that
Yeah.
was really honestly the first time where I looked at a movie and like you said, was like, I can do, I think I could do that. If we had the right prosthetics and whatnot, I think we could do that because, we had just gotten a camcorder and, I don't know. It just, this whole thing for me has been an evolution.
For the next segment, I want to talk to you about if anyone's a wrestling fan. Today's Tuesday, only on the USA Network in Peacock. Make sure to watch WWE NXT. That's available at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. If you miss it, make sure to watch it on Peacock. But with that being said, I want to ask you about working with people who have disabilities. And I'm just going to throw it out for both of you, so both of you can answer it instead of going back and forth. Have you guys worked with people with disabilities besides me? And are you willing to work with people with disabilities? And Jay, we're going to start off with you.
Yeah, I have, and I would like to do it more. There's a whole Screen Actors Guild incentive right now for casting, that includes people with disabilities. I think it's so important to have that kind of representation. And I have worked with, it was one of those situations where like one of the actors I worked with was deaf. And the crew kept saying like, "Wow, that guy is the best listener ever." It's like that sort of thing. Um, my my partner is autistic, and we're making a movie together. So yeah, the answer is yes. I think there's room for everybody, and it's funny because they're all it's like you want to feel like there always has been. Independent film, everybody is so scrappy and like putting it together, and there's such a strong sense of community. Um, and you don't want to feel like anybody is excluded from that because there's room for all voices, especially once digital technology entered into it, like it just like blew it open so that you didn't need a huge budget to go make something. I mean, we were inspired by Evil Dead and Mad Max and movies that didn't have a huge budget. But now with digital technology, anybody can go out and make a movie, which means that we can include everybody on that journey. I think that's so crucial and important, and not just for the people with the disabilities to be included, but for the people, for everyone to hear each other. I think that's vital.
Absolutely. What about you?
So when I owned a martial arts school, was the first time that I had worked with anyone with a disability. And we had some just wonderful families who had kids who were nonverbal on the spectrum of autism. And that was because I was in the Marine Corps. We were, it's not an equal opportunity environment. And then to go from that into owning a business where I'm working with kids and families of all types, it really, I don't know. I just think that they make you realize how beautiful the world is. And then when I got into making movies, there have been two occasions where I've had the opportunity to work with people with disabilities. One was a cinematographer who, like your experience, was deaf, and he had two sign language interpreters with him who would work, 8 on, 8 off. And honestly, I tried to work with him again. But he is so good that he is now out of my price range. He's that good. Um, and if you want Jeremiah, I can give you his contact information. Maybe you can
Yeah,
afford him now.
maybe I would love that. Yeah, absolutely. Let's
But
certainly trade
there was
later.
that one. There was that one. And again, I tried to work with him. He's just too expensive now. Um, and the other one was an actress that I had cast in one of my shorts, and that was, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Now, the last subject I want to talk to you about when we come back from this quick commercial break is social media. Now we're back from the quick commercial break. The last subject I want to talk to you about is social media. The first one is, how can our fans and listeners get in touch with you? Are you guys on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok? And would you guys be interested in creating your own shows and having your own shows? And Brandon, we're going to start off with you.
So funny you mentioned that. I am actually in the process of starting my own show. We're gonna kick it off sometime this fall. I'm just basically gathering footage right now, just to edit together, and I'll probably put together. My goal is to put together 10 episodes before I post anything. Um, and then yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Um, Brandon Scott Keeton. If you look at my Instagram, it's my full name. I know it's not very creative. Brandon Scott Keeton, two T's in the Scott, two E's in the Keaton. And then my YouTube channel, I have a YouTube channel. It's My Third Act is the name of the YouTube channel. That's the one I'll be expanding on with the making my own show.
No, absolutely. What about you, Jay?
Well, excuse me. I'm recovering from a cough actually that's been plaguing me. So you might hear my scratchy voice during this plug. But there aren't very many Jeremiah Kipps. If you Google me, you will find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm just not on X or TikTok.
When I approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what made you say yes? How do you feel now? And would you recommend it to other people?
I was intrigued by the premise, and then I watched a couple of episodes of your show before saying yes, just to see what it was like. And I really appreciated the conversational format of your show. I felt like it was broad in topics. A lot of the times when I'm doing interviews, it's about a movie that I am promoting. And this conversation felt more wide-ranging and covered a lot of topics, and I appreciated that. So, yeah, Keith, you're the new Charlie Rose, it would seem.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, same thing. I watched a couple of episodes, and I just like that you could come on and really talk about it, whatever you wanted. And it's nice to just be able to not hone in on something in particular. And you just, I basically covered my life story here. Most people just want to hear about the movie, which is fine. But yeah, I did appreciate the format.
Wrapping up our talk show, this will be shared on all social medias. Our goal is to reach over 100 to 500 views. But if we reach 1,000, that'd be terrific. That'd be wonderful. That'd be fantastic. 500 to 1,000 is our goal. All your information will be in the description box below. But until we meet again, it was a real honor and privilege having you guys on the show, and I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road. Until then, I'll catch you later. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supporting me and my message is all that matters.